All of a sudden, everything's gone.
Everything is gone, but we are on. Hi, people. Hello, world. Fuck introductions. I don't even know what's going on. Uh, I've heard we did some weird theory, and also heard people think we are out of our fucking minds and completely crazy. So maybe this would be a good moment to, I don't know, make sure that either of those things work. Who are you?
I am Corn Jr. I'm Corn Jr. I'm John Christopher Kern, American, crazy hippie, and
Ah,
I am here to talk about what I've been doing my whole life, which has been studying Hegel and Marx. Mostly Hegel because Marx is sort of straightforward, um, comparatively. Um, um, and I am here to talk about those two in developing a method. I am not, I am not coming up with some ideal. I am working with Hegel and Marx to construct a method of understanding and thus acting in the world. Um, um, and I am doing this in front of this man, Herr Korn. He's watching me do it. I'm surprised that he is not yet sick. But he
I'm
seems
the
to be pushing
sickest,
on.
man. I'm
He
so
seems
sick. I'm the illest.
to be pushing on. Um, um, I myself, at this very moment, am going through looking for my thing, a crucial thing on Hegel, which some notes here, which I should have pulled up way before,
Who
way
needs
before.
notes?
So I do because I'm not because I want to put something that everybody can see, and now I'm going like, whoa, where is it?
Oh, please don't.
Hegel
Please don't.
logic.
We already saw your treasure map, our
This is
treasure
another
map,
one. This is another
pretty
one,
much.
and my treasure map changes all the time
Pretty much
because
your
I'm working
treasure
on it.
map.
It's a work in progress.
Working
Um,
through arguments, how they are being constructed, what's the ideological framework, all that kind of jibe, and then there was me.
that which so I've worked on, and I'm gonna flash it on. I'm gonna flash. I'm okay. First, so here's the thing, folks. I am um, talking about state politics, politics slash the state, going through the texts of Hegel and then Marx, but I'm mostly focusing on the state itself. In the large sense, as in the way that we are organized, as in how the Constitution works. This is what's new about Hegel. He is talking about a constitutional nation state. That's new, and he's doing so in terms of articulating a new phenomena in the early 19th century civil society, and that's what's new in political theory. I would argue that the constitutional nation state, I am arguing, is indeed, or the way that Hegel lays it out is the way that we lay it out now. Its ideal form, ideal, capital I, DEAL, is liberal democracy. However, it is constructed, as Hegel well knows, full of contradictions, full of contradictions, which provide the dynamics, which provide the changes that we live through and that we may suffer through, and it would and which may bring the whole thing down. Hegel's structure is just as complex as our world is today. And it's complex in ways that confront us as individuals. In terms of Hegel's theory, he moves from the phenomenology, which is sort of the way that self-consciousness is constructed, the way that the modern conception of who we are as individuals and a collectivity. He wants to construct a sense of how we understand and how we live, how we experience, and how we judge. Um, 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 Another way to put it, he wants to talk about the relationship between the we and the I. The idea that I am comprised of many personas, which I could say we indeed our language is still trying to cope with that, or actually still sort of discovering the fact that you are a they, and that makes it difficult for us. But we sort of understand why it is you want to call someone a they, because we are multiple. But at the same time, we speak through an I. When we take responsibility, we take responsibility as an I. I did this. To say we did this confuses things. So Hegel is concerned to understand the I that is we and the we that is I. The we also being not just the self, but the culture. What it means to be free is to live or is to be self-conscious within a culture and act in such a way which perpetuates all that is creative in that culture. The we makes more eyes, the eyes comprise the we. This is the ethical life. This is the ethical life. Within this develops morality. Within this develops dignity. Within this develops autonomy. Within this develops a sense of the good, the right, and the beautiful. In all of this, in the phenomenology, what we get is Hegel looks at the state. And again, he's writing this in 1806. He's writing 15 years from the terror. He's just lived through Napoleon, and he does not trust state politics. He does not trust the state. He sees the state as sort of necessary infrastructure, but state consciousness, the position of absolute authority and sovereignty, he more views as a dangerous thing, as invoking terror, invoking terror. And this could be, again, the French revolutionary state, it could be the Napoleonic state, or it could be the Prussian state, which I'll talk a bit about later. Then he then becomes a historian and writes the philosophy of history. He articulates. He begins to realize that there are more options. There are various ways that the world works. Indeed, if there's one thing that was missing in my previous discussion of the phenomenology, something that actually most people, when they talk about the phenomenology, tend to glide by, and I was just guilty of that. That is spirit. It's not just the phenomenology; it's the phenomenology of spirit. And Hegel notes something that is powerful in the world, but is more than just an I. It is a feeling which defines an era that is active in the world. We might call this intersubjectivity, and that is a useful term to understand the reality of ideas. My favorite example is that a dollar is just a piece of paper. It only has meaning in an intersubjective world. A dollar is a thing which has value only because we think it is. We think it has value, but intersubjectivity doesn't really capture it. Because intersubjectivity in itself is not an active. There's nothing active inherent in that world. Spirit moves. Spirit moves. There are a lot. There's a lot of folks who were interested in spirit in the 18th and 19th centuries. There was Montesquieu's Spirit of Laws. There is all the way to Weber's Spirit of Capitalism. Tocqueville talks about spirit. We don't talk about spirit anymore, which is a shame. And if there's anything that I'm interested in, it is that is contrary to the prevailing scientific tenor, is that I am interested in how spirit works. Although how spirit acts, how spirit moves. Hegel understood himself as a scientist, and doing science. So did Marx. But what he meant by that was a coherent system, a coherent dynamic system, and that brings me to the logic. To the logic. In the phenomenology. No, in the philosophy of history, he realizes the significance of the state. He sees that politics does indeed define different spirits and different cultures at different times, but he's not quite sure what to do with this in a sort of rational way. When he moves to the logic, we get this rationality. This sort of what we might call, what he would call, scientific approach, or understanding. The focus that I'm interested in is what Hegel does in the logic and how it compares to his last book, his fourth book, The Philosophy of Right. In doing so, I want to bring up the one paragraph in which Hegel addresses the logic of the state in a rather frustrating way, because it is so precise and rather amazing. And I want to talk about that and point out how to understand this, and then how to and then point out how Hegel changes when he does the philosophy of right. So I'm going to pull up.
There's already a lot in what you would just uttered that that seriously relates to my life and the shit that's going on with me, like psychologically, with my crazy story, depressive episodes where I was still hanging on in a constructivist manner. That's what my therapist said. She made me look into Václavic to work on my state of mind that was very unfluid and very, just a constructed shell, essentially, I had to fill with life, and that became increasingly difficult because the 1,000 me's rotating inside of me, which is a quote from the rap legend LP, shout out to LP and run the fucking jewels. So there's something going on psychologically where you go through stages where you might think you are someone which you are essentially not, you're just in love with the idea of being
Yeah.
someone, which you ain't, but
Mhm.
you still have to move in the world and kind of. So this is all very difficult
Yeah.
to navigate, and I think there's something that relates, and there is an analogy, something in the psychology of,
Yes.
if you want, Western culture that's coming up in Hegel and in
Yes.
um, his observation of the state.
Yes. Yes. Um, 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 and I'm going to, well, as soon as I can figure out how to share, how to how to bring my screen on. Um, 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 oh, Corn, how do I
Don't,
do this?
don't.
Don't.
Nah, people don't care, man. Just explain what
Okay.
you're looking at. Give us
Okay.
the worst.
Well, so what I'm doing here is that, well, actually, let me please try, please.
Okay, for a second.
Thank you. Now I have to get it on the screen, a share screen.
No, man.
And
You and
I
your problems,
know
man.
I know, and now it's like not doing what I want it to do. Window, open system setting. To share your window, allow screen recording for Chrome in system setting. Oh, Jesus Christ.
No,
No,
just
no.
no.
Okay.
Google
Okay, just no.
said no.
Okay, Google said no. Okay, so this is what Hegel says
Thanks, Google.
about, I know, Google. Okay, Hegel says, this is how Hegel talks about the state in in the logic, and he does so in terms of three concepts which make up a syllogism. And these are individuality, particularity, and universality, or I, P, and U. So this is highly abstract. Particularity is of course a part of the whole. We are all parts of the whole. The whole is universality. The whole is, you can think of it as the system, and if you wish. And then this is understanding the world in terms of parts and wholes. Part you and you can look at parts and wholes, well, as two ways to look at a system. So if you're looking, and in English, or in English, really true, we or actually in social science, we use the term operational and functional. So think of, you're looking at a heart, a beating heart. This is a part of the system. And if you want to understand how the heart works in terms of the system, what the heart does functionally, how it functions. So when you're talking about how something functions, you're talking about how it works within a system. So in this sense, the heart pumps blood. The lungs bring in oxygen for the blood. The heart has a place in the system. You can only understand the heart in terms of the system. It's sort of like a carburetor in a car. If you want to say what a carburetor does, then you talk about how it blends together oxygen and benzene, gasoline in the precise amount, and then injects it into a piston, the engine. In other words, you're talking about what the carburetor, how it works within the system. When I say how it works, that means functions. But that is that's how it functions, how it operates. If you want to know how, however, how the heart operates, you look at the part itself. You look at the part itself. And that's the interior of the heart, how it pumps. So when you look at construction of an automobile, you start with the chassis, and then you build onto the chassis. But the way so you can start any analysis. You can start from a part to a whole, or a whole to a part. This is the relation of parts and wholes. The point is that neither one, understanding the part in terms of the wholes, or explaining the part in terms of the wholes, or explaining the wholes in terms of the part, they're both correct. You both need you need both explanations to understand a system. But Hegel then introduces something else to this. By the way, that system is pure Aristotelianism. There's the individual. The individual. That's the I, and the individual is the motivating factor of action. The relationship of the part and whole is static. It moves through what the individuals do. So there's parts, there's wholes, then there's the individual. There's sort of and think of it in terms of a psyche. There's the various feelings and thoughts that you have. Then there's the overall self that these comprise. Then there is that function of action, decision making, will, and that's the I. So that's now Hegel then talks about the relationship. Well, he does this in terms of, or he talks about the state in terms of three organizations of these syllogisms. There's IPU, individual, part, and universality and universal, in which the key centering mediating term is particular. And then he talks about UIP, universal, is mediated through the individual, or the universal and the particular is mediated through the individual. And the first one, IPU, the individual and the universal, is mediated through the particular, and then PUI.
Oh man, I hate math. That sounds like math.
Okay.
I'm joking.
So,
Actually
no. So this, our friend Sally, she would say this is unintelligible. And however,
no, it's an equation. You know, it's like this mathematical mode of
it is
looking at stuff.
Hegel is being logical. Hegel is being analytical. But he knows, but he's trying to bring in individual. He's trying to bring in will. So here is, so he does this in three ways of looking at the system. So here's the famous here is the famous paragraph 198 in the Logic. Like the solar system, Hegel starts out. So, for example, in the practical sphere, the state is a system of three syllogisms. The first one, IPU. So this is the individual in relationship to the whole, which is mediated by the particular. So Hegel says, one, the individual or person, through his particularity or physical or mental needs, which when carried out to their full development to give civil society, is coupled with the universal, is coupled with the universal, with society, law, and right. So in this analytical framework, what we do is that we look at Kern, and we look at Kern's what motivates Kern. And in this case, we look at Kern as a particular person with a particular history, with a particular body and a particular psyche.
In
And
this economy, I don't know,
Kern, now, in other words, that's how we explain Kern. That's how we explain Kern. In other words, Kern is a part of a whole and has needs, which are determined by, as Marx say, the division of labor. To understand Kern, we focus as where, so like his actions in a particular place. You are connected. On the one side, there's this individual Kern, and on the other side is society, law, right, and government. To understand how Kern relates to these big structures, society, law, right, government, what Hegel calls the universal, the system. Kern as an individual relates to the system through his particularity, the particular Kernness, within which he fits into the whole. That's IPU. And again, so there's individual, particular, universal. How Kern is related to the ethos, to history, to the government. And here again, we look at his mental, physical needs, his various attributes, and all that individuals are. Essentially, as a whole, is an interaction between our particular needs. You think this way. This is the way we think. But it's 1/3. Because then Hegel says, but there's another way we think. And this is UIP. This is how the parts are related to the whole. So last time he started with how to explain Kern, the individual. But now let's talk about well, how does Hegel say it? The will or action of the individuals is the intermediating force. In other words, this is here we focus on the mediating term, and that's Kern's decisions. Kern is not all these particular things. He is the will. He is an individual which has through which he makes the claim of responsibility. Is he did this? It's this Kern guy. It would be wrong of me to say that no. What set up this pod was Kern's psychological needs. No, what set up this podcast is the will of Kern. To this extent, we focus on the individual. We focus on we don't here we use names. We use Marx. We use Hegel. We use Jesus. We use Hitler. We use all these. We focus on not the psyche as part, but the psyche as the force itself. So the will or action of the individuals is the intermediating force which procures for these needs satisfaction in society. So Kern has these needs, but what fulfills them, what procures them is his will. What connects Kern's needs to the whole. The whole is the will. So the needs. So the will or action of the individuals is the intermediating force, which procures for these needs satisfaction in society, in law, etc., and which gives to society, law, etc., their fulfillment and their interaction. It is so this is UIP. The universal, Corn's needs are universal. They're what is everybody has these needs. Everybody has these wants. But what provided these things are Corn himself. Here, the analysis would not be on the way Corn fits into the world, but the psyche of Corn, the psyche of Corn, as they are pulled together by his unique will. And it is this willful psyche is what determines what moves him to get what he needs in law, in society. Indeed, law and society and right and good government are nothing if there isn't individual will. The world wouldn't work without will. So here we start off with the universal human, as which needs to be pulled together through a will to actualize in the world. So we have IPU mediated by the particular, UIP of the individual. But then he says, well, what do we got here? We have PUI. The universal is the underlying mean. So here I'll read it. But the universal, that is to say, state, government, and law, is the permanent underlying mean in which the individuals and their satisfaction have and receive their fulfilled reality, intermediation, and persistence. In other words, it's the culture that pulls the world together. We start with the particular, all these individuals, all these particulars, and then on the one side and on the other side is the individual, what Corn is, how Corn acts. In the middle is the universal. In other words, the culture, the law, society. So three systems of explanation. One is, if you want to talk about Corn, you talk about his specific physical or mental needs, as they are met in society. That's what connects Corn to the world. Is his physicality and specific psychology. That's one way to look at the world. That's one way. So when we explain Corn, we'll say, well, you got to know about this Corn guy and his needs, his basic self.
Man, you
Then
gotta understand,
that's right. Or you can say it's Corn's will. It's Corn's ideals. It's what Corn is trying to do in the world. That's how we describe Corn. Not his pre-existing physical mental self, but his will, but what his action. That's how you describe Corn. Then the third way is no. If you want to understand Corn, you have to understand Corn as he is pulled together through his through the culture. That's what unites him between the state and his needs and his psychic needs. All three of these are ways in which we look at Corn in the world. We look at his particularity. We look at his in other words, the Corn as a human with human needs. We look at him through his ideality. In other words, the things that Corn is trying to do. Then we look at the culture which binds the two together. Now some final. So 1, 2, 3. Each one of these 1, 2, 3 are Hegel sums them up perfectly as three systems of mediation. However, it takes it really calls for an abstract mind to realize what the hell he's talking about. Furthermore, so he calls this a system of three syllogisms. You have to keep all of these in mind because no one of them is adequate. You have to understand Korn's culture, you have to understand Korn's particular self, and you have to understand Korn's ideals that he's trying to actualize. As Hegel says, each of the functions of the notion, universal, particular, and individual, each of the functions of the notion, so the notion is made up of these three elements which interact, we can see interact in a particular way, as it is brought by intermediation to coalesce with the other extreme. So in the first one, particularity unifies the extreme of the individual and the universal. In the second one, the individual mediates between the extremes of the universal and the particular. And in the third one, the universal mediates between the particular and the universal. Each of the functions of the notion, again, as it is brought by intermediation to coalesce with the other extreme, is brought into union with itself and produces itself. So which production is self-preservation? In other words, the particular unifies the individual, or our particular needs is what connects us universally to or to the universal world, society, law, and right, and government. In other words, to perpetuate themselves. Korn's psyche makes other Korns in the future, or perpetuates his own self in
Quick
order
question
to
here.
fulfill. Yeah.
Do you know if he, I might have mixed that up, the times and whatnot, Leibniz, when did he live with his monadology?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Because
Right.
the way
Yeah.
Hegel is thinking about this really is akin to monads,
Right.
different
Yes.
layers
So yes.
overlapping each other, those
That's
three.
right.
It's also
That's right.
the Trinity,
Yes.
interestingly,
Yeah. Yeah.
all
Yeah.
spiritual concept. So,
Yes. So he is. So Hegel would see himself as trying to mediate between Kant and Leibniz. That's the previous generation. That's the previous generation. All of us, in this sense, are trying to work out um, 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 are trying to work out what our parents were doing. And indeed, here for example, the will or action of the individuals. So Hegel is trying to work out Leibniz. Hegel is mediating between Leibniz and Kant, and we use these names as sort of substitutes for the for the ideals and actions that they are trying to articulate in terms of a culture that within which we understand them. It is only by the nature of this triple coupling, by this triad of syllogisms with the same termini, that is ends, or extremes, that a whole is thoroughly understood in its organization. This is Hegel as a logician. This is Hegel saying, this is how the system works. This is how the system works. These are three explanatory frameworks through which a system develops itself. Now, and indeed, that's the state. That's the state. So again, like the solar system, for example, in the practical sphere, the state is a system of three syllogisms. That's the state. Now, look at how Hegel. Here are two short paragraphs on how Hegel looks at the same thing through the philosophy of right. And here he has gone back to the phenomenology, back to self-consciousness and consciousness that we are self-conscious, and rethinks out the whole thing in terms of ethical life. So this is what he says about the state, not as a triad of triple syllogisms, but he says this: ethical life is the idea of freedom as the living good, which has its knowledge and volition in self-consciousness and its actuality through self-conscious action. Here he's talking about ethical life is the good life. Ethical life is our culture as to the extent that we understand it as a good thing, that within which we can thrive. And he understands this as collectively as the idea of freedom. The idea of freedom has its knowledge and has its knowledge and its volition in self-consciousness. Freedom is, and ethical life lies in self-consciousness. That is the I, the way in which we act. Indeed, its actuality or reality through self-conscious action. Not behavior, but the reasons why you act the way that you do. That's where the ethical life lives through the reasons through which you act. Similarly, it is in ethical being that self-consciousness has its motivating end and foundation. In other words, the ground of our thoughts lies in our culture, which has being in and for itself. In itself means it exists without us, our culture. But it is also the way that we think. The way that we think. Ethical life is accordingly the concept of freedom, which has become the existing world. In other words, freedom is that, or the possibility of freedom exists right in front of us, but also in the way that we think. Compare that to what I just read, in which here he's using completely different language. He's talking ethics, freedom, self-consciousness, knowledge, volition, self-conscious action. It's an entirely different framework. This is the phenomenology. He's trying to bring together the phenomenology and the logic. Now, paragraph 57, the state. That was, by the way, the ethical life. That's paragraph 142. Paragraph 157 in the Elements of the Philosophy of Right. Here is the state. And he comes right out. The state is the actuality of the ethical idea. Actuality means the world, the actual world that we live in. It is our experience of the world. It's when you dream, there is you, and you are surrounded by a world. That world is made up by you. So there is you in the world, and both of these things are you. The actuality is the world that you experience in terms of its value. So here, I could hold a piece of paper in front of you and say this has value. I'm correct. What I'm saying is that in this system, this piece of paper has value. You can deny it, but you still have to pay rent. You can say, oh, that's just a piece of paper. And I would say, yeah, well, you need 1,000 of them to actually live here, right? You can't go up and cut out 1,000 pieces of paper and hand them in as rent. The state is the actuality, it's the world of the ethical idea. The ethical spirit as substantial will, manifest and clear to itself. In other words, when Kern says, well, that's just the way Germany works today. When he is saying that, he's saying the ethical spirit works. It has a will. If you try and pay your rent with 1,000 pieces of paper that you just cut out, that's not going to work.
Even the absence of a real political will is the presence of a will. You know,
That's right.
that's the nothing burger of the actual Germany. Welcome to the genocide,
Right. Well,
fuckers.
So again, the state is the actuality. It's the world of the ethical idea. The ethical spirit as substantial will, manifest and clear to itself, like obviously, which thinks and knows itself and implements what it knows insofar as it knows it. So this is the state as making law. Making law. What do? We make laws for ourselves through which we understand the value of ourselves. So Kern has lived in the world, and as he's lived in the world, he's constructed on ethics, and he makes decisions which comprise for him immediately or over time a law by which he determines what's right and what's wrong. Thus, the collectivity does this also through this thing called the state. The state, now, you may not like the state, but the state, you can think of it this way: the state is the collective which establishes law. So you can call it the commune, you can call it the household. It is that institution through which the collectivity establishes, makes clear what how it is we need to act.
You may not be interested in the state, but the state is interested in you.
Yes, but you could also say the commune, you could say the party, you could say the family. It has immediate existence in custom. In other words, so in a village, nobody has to, the laws aren't written down, but everybody knows what to do. In the village, the laws are known by everybody, and indeed, you don't have to explain them. That's the immediate existence. But its mediate existence, it's mediated through self-consciousness. In other words, in terms of the specific reasons you have for acting. And the extent to which you've made these clear as reasons. In other words, it's if for you, it's like, well, I'm going to do this because of that. And it's just that in a collective, this is written down as law that you can look up in a book in a library. This is so its immediate existence is in the self-consciousness of the individual, in the individual's knowledge and activity. In other words, everything you do because you know it's legal and the right thing to do, but also the good thing to do. Why? Because it's that which holds us together. So so it has its immediate existence in custom and its immediate existence in self-consciousness of the individual, in the individual's knowledge and activity, just as self-consciousness, your mind, by virtue of its disposition. In other words, this is the Kern's eye, as in when Kern says, I'm doing it this way for these reasons. So the individual self-conscious has its substantial freedom in the state. Kern would not be able to do all the things that Kern does if it wasn't for the state that that essentially lays out the laws by which corn gets his food, turns the heat on, pulls all these particular things together as a podcast. Corn could not do this without the state. By virtue, so self-consciousness, the I that through which corn acts, by virtue of its disposition, in other words, his particular history, his particular place in the division of labor, but not but in that exists in his psyche and in the economy, has its freedom in the state as its essence, its purpose, and the product of its activity. In other words, corn does what he does for the good of all. He does what he does for the community, which made him in the first place. The state is only that apparatus which makes these laws clear, mediate. In other words, they are objective. It's the language in which it's written down. Notice the ideas here. So instead of particular, universal, individual, and mediation, you have the same language of mediate and immediate. But here we're talking about this is the state, the idea, the actuality. The actuality is the experienced world. We have self-consciousness, we have experience, we have knowledge and activity, we have disposition. We have, in other words, we have the experience of the system of the logic. This very complicated system is on a philosophical level what Hegel has done. He's brought in, so after having finished the logic, he's written out this very abstract ways of looking at how individuals' particular needs and universal rules and ideas which pull us all together, and re-explained it in terms of the experiences of freedom and ethics. In terms of immediate knowledge and immediate existence. In other words, Korn's world and the way that he and the way that he lives it and the reasons for which he lives it. This is the goal of the philosophy of right, to talk about how the state is experienced as freedom. Even if you don't think the state today has anything to do with freedom, two responses. One, you are still looking at the state as something that should embody freedom. So you may not think that the state actually does this, but you do have an idea that this is what the state should do. The state here is just collective life written down as a series of clear laws, rules by which we ought to live. So if you are pissed off with the state because it denies your freedom, then the implicit assumption is that this is what the state should do. In other words, you are still using freedom to understand the state. In other words, this may not be what the state actually does, but this is how you know, or we think of the state in terms of freedom. To put in another way, Hegel is not talking about the way that this, but let me step back. Tatum is actually not talking about what the state should be, but how we think the state should be, number one. Number two, he's talking about what the state is. If you want a coherent legal system through which we understand the ways in which we are organized together, that is what a state does. That is what a state does. So it's more, this is a state. This is the concept of the state. This is the idea. In other words, how the state works. This is the idea of the state. You may not like your particular state, but if you're going to build a world in which everybody's held together through self-consciousness, that is language, which constructs our reasons, this is what you got to do. That's Hegel's argument. Now, so I want to lay this out for you. What I just did is for the Hegel nerds.
No, no. This is for all of us, and it goes a long way, maybe a bit too much, into how I'm working and the inner workings of the Jews world. But here we go. Now it's out there. What can I say?
So what I want to do. So two things, which I will probably say again, for all those folks who say, yeah, but Hegel's concept of the state, which you'll read which I've read in so many lines on Facebook, people who think they understand Hegel, they'll say Hegel is just justifying the Prussian state. That's what Hegel is doing. He's just a tool of this particular state. So to understand Hegel, all you have to do is study the Prussian state. That's the implication. And so don't read Hegel, just read Prussian state law. And now there are some clear things there's if you read the philosophy of right and see what Hegel actually says, this will quickly disabuse you. First off, Hegel puts forward things, or says, when he describes what it is in the idea of a state. First of all, and most importantly, Hegel says there must be freedom of the press.
Man, the Prussians hated him.
The Prussians hated him.
I mean, how could this work?
Why does Hegel say this? Well, because he knows that the state exists in our knowledge of the state. We can only have rational laws if everybody knows what the law is, how the law works, and indeed what the law is doing. Hegel knows that the state lies in our minds, in our feelings. That is, dare I say, UIP, that it's an individual action that pulls together our particular needs and the universal culture. When we act, we must act with the state in mind. If we don't know what the state is doing, we can't act. Furthermore, jury trials. This is like what? Hegel thinks that the law should be pronounced in particular cases, not by a judge, but by a jury. In other words, it's the culture that decides. 12 random people. That's not the Prussian state.
No, that's Rosa Luxemburg, man.
In other words, and indeed, Luxemburg fits into this schema. This is the idea is, in other words, you can use Hegel to explain Luxemburg. You can use Luxemburg to explain Hegel. The jury trial is that place in which the implicit culture becomes real as law. This is not in the Prussian state, but most importantly, Hegel organizes this constitutional state in terms of three groups or three institutions, which in turn reflect, well, universal, particular, and individual. The individual is what Hegel thinks is the monarch. The monarch is the I. He's the guy that signs the law. Now, people, oh, here's the Prussian king. No, wrong. Because what Hegel says, really, the monarch is really nobody. Because it could be anybody. Because the monarch has really no idea of how the state works. The people who really know how the state works is the bureaucracy.
He's just a fucking front. He's just a shell for the divine right, of monarchs.
Well, actually, what Hegel says about the monarch is sort of like Trump. Trump gets up and he signs these things, and he has a big thing. He signs this stuff. But what Hegel says clearly is that this is all that the monarch is. He's just a signature. The monarch dots the I's and crosses the T's, but has no idea what he's actually signing. So when you see Trump signing something, an executive order, and putting it up, that's all that Trump is. He has no idea how the state works. He just is working through his advisors. It's the bureaucrats who carry out the law, who work with the law. This is the particular. They know, they are the ones who know the way the law works.
Same people who also administer the drugs so that the fucking actors can act accordingly. So just in case you're wondering why they're so strange, doing so much whack shit, yeah, well, man, that's your lead.
So then now you can say, aha, it is the Prussian state. but no, there's so you've got the individual, but which, by the way, Hegel makes a big deal about. The individual is freedom. It's the Socratic daemon. But then Riley says, but really the monarch doesn't know what he's doing, and he's just signing the letter. In other words, but here's another thing. Well, I'll get back to the there's a real function that this signature plays. But then there's the universal. And this is where Hegel, again, is not talking about the Prussian state. He's talking about the legislature. So we've got the monarch as the individual who sort of is who signs the bill. The bureaucrats who make the who sort of like who enact the who make the laws. Then there's the legislature. The legislature consists of the bureaucrats and elected representatives. People elected, in some cases appointed from civil society. And in other words, they're the guys who ostensibly write the laws. But the real reality, the real function of the legislature is in the debates, in which, because what happens in the legislature is politics. And what politics is arguments made by the bureaucrats against the representatives, or the representatives made making arguments against the state. In other words, the legislature exists for us to read these debates. The function of the legislature is for the collective self-consciousness to know what's going on. The laws are written all the time. What really matters is how we understand these laws, we as a collective. And this understanding is gained through following these debates. These debates, these arguments about the state are the state. This is where spirit happens. In these arguments in which the bureaucrats and representatives have it out. But and here, no way the Prussians want this, because all of this has to be open. All of this has to be public.
And it looks really dirty when you watch Trump talking with the guy from Chevron about taking Venezuela apart and how you could build up the infrastructure. It's just fucking
Right.
amazing.
So the important thing is that we know this, because Trump knows that what really, really matters is not so much what he says, but how it's understood. Hey, in other words, public opinion. In other words, the polls.
The framing.
It is it's so the state really exists. Trump knows that if the polls don't like, if the stock market falls, if public opinion polls collapse, then he's losing and he's got to do something about it. Trump says, I decide my morality is in what I think. Yeah, but what he thinks is he needs power, and he only gets power in terms of the way that people understand him. Trump is an advertising man. He knows that he needs people to agree with him. Trump backs down all the time. Why? Because he knows if something looks bad, it won't work. This is so, and now, how do we know this today? Public opinion polls. How is Trump doing in the polls? That's where the spirit lies. But where does public opinion get its information? From the press. What? So
there it is. That's a self-licking ice cream cone. I see it.
So what is spirit? Spirit is, well, the news. What is happening that's new? What's the cutting edge of the collective action? And here, I kid you not, Hegel says that every morning he goes to church. But what is that? But in other words, and what is church for Hegel? For Hegel, church is reading the newspaper. Hegel says that reading the newspaper is the modern equivalent of going to the church, because that's where we learn about what we are thinking. This is why I spend 2 to 3 hours every morning going through the news.
That's exactly why I'm checking for new soundtracks every day and looking for new music. That's my kind of news. That's looking where's the spirit at, you know?
That's right. That, in other words, it's through the media, mediate, yes, that of publicity, that we formulate our ideas of what the whole is doing and how the whole should act. It's the church. In other words, it's something that we must do every day. I pray when I read everything from the New York Times to Jacobin on the left, when I read the things that the fascists are saying, what Trump is saying, the whole vibrant, insane, crazy world, which is just crazy, just like you, just like me. And you can, and Hegel wants this all public. To this extent, the internet is exactly what Hegel wants it to be. It's the id that we examine every day, either when we read the newspapers or when we talk to our therapists. This puts, and this is what politics is. Politics is when we study these debates to get a sense of who's winning and who's losing, to get a sense of who we are, of who we are. This is how the system works. This is why we read the journals, because we're trying essentially to read ourselves. Now, so in other words, no, he's not saying what this is. He's just validating the present state. He's talking about more or less what we do now. What we do now. He's talking about modernity to the extent that we we act out the morals of our time in terms of this rational organization that pre-exists our criticism. What I mean by that is that we say the state is irrational, capitalism is irrational and chaos. Well, when we say that, we're saying exactly what Hegel would say, is that we are judging the system in terms of of rationality.
So are we idealists?
In the sense of yes, this is what makes Hegel an idealist, to the extent that the world is comprised by our ideals, but our ideals as we measure them against each other. So gosh, there's my life, and there's the life that we think we ought to live.
That's a nice way to say that the question actually means nothing.
As a matter of fact, I wasn't going to say that.
Thanks anyway. Pretty good one.
However, there are problems with this. There are problems, and Hegel knows it. By the way, before we leave history, what was happening? So Hegel's got all this stuff, which in fact we still live out. And by the way, this isn't a Hegelian version of the state. What I am going to do next time is show you how this works today.
Yeah, already too much.
Yeah, it's already too much.
Too much intel, too much information. This is too juicy. We need to hide a big part of it behind the paywall on our Patreon, so that people throw money at us, so I can hire you and more people.
This is this is sort of like will be underlying the explanation in the future, but this is sort of the ideas that we already have, and this is the claim that I'm making. And if anybody wants to criticize me, this is where it is. I'm making the argument that this is the way you already think of the state. This is all your vision of the state. Even if you think the state shouldn't exist, I'm assuming that you do think that there should be laws written down which organizes us in terms of reasons which we can all talk about and discuss, that again are written down in text.
Ideally, we could talk about that. Ideally, we would be able to solve our problems with debate.
Now, another reason. Let me also provide some historical background, which is found in the preface. Now, if it is a good idea, Hegel has this in the preface to the Philosophy of Right. Hegel makes the claim that the rational is actual and the actual is rational. And he says this in the preface. Now, I could explain this to you. It would be better if Hegel had said the state is, or if he said that the rational becomes actual, and the actual becomes rational.
Yeah, that's the important part. You can rationalize anything, man.
Yeah.
That's
Um,
also the
um,
problem.
right. Now, I won't go into that now. Um, but what I will say is two things. One, think of this in terms of, and I think I've done this with Kern before, a constitution. Now, when I say constitution, Hegel wants a constitutional state. When we talk about a constitution, we mean four things. First, we mean a constitution is a written body or a written down piece of paper through which we can understand clearly and talk about in an objective way, because we can go back to the text. It's the specific document and the words that hold us together as a people, the Constitution. And there's a German Constitution, there's the United States Constitution, there's a Chinese Constitution. Now, the Constitution are these words, right? We understand what law has become in terms of writing. The legislature gets together and passes a law. Now, this law, we all know, only really matters in terms of the way that the bureaucrats are going to implement it, are going to work it out in the so-called real world. But when does it actually become a law? So all these guys get together in a room. They talk a lot. They come to a conclusion. They say it. Then, well, there has to be a vote. And there has to be somebody who says, it's the, okay, slam the gavel down and say, it's now a law. But not really. It's a bill. It's not a law until, well, the monarch, the president, signs it. There needs to be some moment in which it is a bill, it's a proposition, and it is actually a law. There needs to be some signifying act, something you can look back on and say, this is what it is, and that's a signature. Somebody has to do it. Somebody has to. You have to sign your name. There need signifying that this is now this is now the law. That's what the monarch does. That's, to a certain degree, as Hegel says, dots the I's and crosses the T. But this is really, really important. There needs to be somebody who is duly appointed to do this thing. That's why and that's the role for the that's the executive function. Or actually, the executive function is to run the bureaucracy, but really the monarch has really no idea how the bureaucracy works. In any case, this when the Supreme Court signs the ruling, then it becomes a law. So the Constitution is this body of written down law, number one. Number two, that's not the Constitution. The Constitution is the way in which we interpret the law. It is our collective understanding of how the law works. It's how the cop on the street understands the law. It's how each of us as an individual. It doesn't make a difference when I'm talking with Kern what either Kern or I or what the law actually is. For the sake of the argument, it's what Kern and I think the law is. The law is furthermore, the law is custom. The law is history. It is all of those ways in which we have implemented and we think about it. That is the greater sense of the law. To this, then there's a third way, and that is it's how we think of the law. It's every single law. It's a constitution. So con means with, and stit is institution. It's a combination of institutions. So what a constitution is, it's every law from jaywalking to parking fines to Supreme Court decisions and the written constitution itself. It is the whole thing. It is the whole thing. A constitution is all how all of these different laws work together. So the Constitution is a written document. The Constitution is what we think it is, how we argue about it, how we feel about it. The Constitution, as individuals, the Constitution is a collection of the way that is organized by the law, and the Constitution finally is a process. Constitution, like hidden in that word, in TION words, most, not all, most TION words are processes. Information, no, I'm sorry, not it is that which informs. It's a process of learning, locomotion, communication, transportation. These are all active words. The Constitution is the way that we constitute ourselves as an activity. The Constitution is continuing to evolve. And it evolves in terms of all of the three previous things. One, the written words. Two, the way that you or I understand these words and argue about them and think about them. Three, the way it pulls everything together. And four, the way it's constituting itself. So if you were to ask me, what's happening in America today? I would be wrong if I didn't say America's a mess. But then you could say, well, wait a minute. The Supreme Court just ruled on one of Trump's actions, and the Supreme Court stopped Trump. In other words, the system works. Well, yeah, the system works, okay. And Trump has to change things, but things are still a mess, but the system still works. One of my favorite examples is in the late 60s. America was at its height, its most powerful. We were organizing the world. There was the Soviet Union was flailing. We had the highest GDP in the world. We had the highest standard of living. Our production, our culture, our innovation, invention. We were at the top.
Really? And if the Soviets would have started the war in the 60s, 70s, then...
But they didn't.
Yeah, just saying, goes to the point, which is what?
Well, here's the lie of it. Here's the lie. So I could say all those things, and I would be right, but at the same time, there were riots in the streets. There was there were black and white folks there killing each other, but the sons and daughters of the elite were protesting against the Vietnam War. But there was new music happening, so which was changing the world and the culture. So if you asked me, how are things in the United States? I could give the first answer. Oh, the United States is great. We're powerful. We're on top of it. That would be true, but that wouldn't be true. And how are things in the United States? I would say they're crazy.
Crazy.
things in the United States, but the sons and the daughters of the elite are breaking the law. People are taking drugs, but at the same time, they're learning new modes of consciousness. The world is unstable, chaotic. Both would be correct. It just depends upon which sense of the Constitution that we're talking about.
Do you have the Constitution to hold both things in your
Ah,
mind at the same time?
That's the question. So now Hegel comes up with this idea, or with these complicated ideas, but he sees for one serious flaw. And this flaw is what he thinks is grounded in humanity itself. And it's grounded in the very way that we think. And this is what Hegel realizes when he's writing the philosophy of right, because he sees, and it scares the daylights out of him, he sees that there's a serious flaw at the heart of the system, and that's self-consciousness itself. What he sees, and this is what he calls the negative dialectic. This is the way that people think. We organize our lives in our world in terms of just universals and particulars. In other words, everything is a lie, to the extent that we understand things in terms of ideas which do not really line up with the way that the world works. But in other words, indeed, you go to the very way that we use our language. Here's an example. What's a tree? What's a tree? Well, can you draw a tree? Well, no, because there are thousands of different kinds of trees. You can never draw a perfect tree, because trees are different. In other words, the concept or the notion, the idea of a tree never precisely fits. The ideas through which we organize the world only roughly fits the way the world works. Our senses of right and wrong are based on abstract language. But abstract language never precisely fits the world. Nor does the world precisely fit our language. Indeed, there is corn, and then there's the idea that corn has of corn. But the two never fit.
Hey, sometimes they do.
If
I'm lucky.
Sometimes they do. And that is the problem, because when they do fit, then we think, oh, it fits.
Damn.
And this is great. My ideas of myself fit myself.
Yeah, then you can be taken by yourself or
and
drunk
then
on
we
it.
think that the problem is that we think that's normal. Is it why I'm always my ideas that I have of myself?
But are you really?
But exactly. What Hegel understands is, what he sees when he gets the philosophy of right is, and he calls this understanding. And he blames this all conveniently, inconveniently, incorrectly, correctly on Kant. Because Kant understands the world in terms of this sense of what it means to be human, in other words, or what it means to be free in terms of the categorical imperative. And Hegel wants to say, nobody really lives like that.
He was like, I just can't, man.
However, Hegel also sees that this is the only way that we can think. That most of the world is organized in terms of universals and particulars, in terms of plans, in terms of laws that mostly fit but sometimes don't.
Right.
This is the logic that Hegel calls of the understanding. The only problem is that there are times in which this gets stuck, in which we think of no, no, the whole is greater than the parts, and the parts should obey the whole, the laws that the whole has set up. No. The parts become are prior to the whole. The problem is with human consciousness is that we can get stuck in this debate that goes back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Hegel calls this false infinity because it goes nowhere. It goes nowhere. Now, real infinity is a progress, But when you go back and forth, the world is made of individuals. No, individuals only exist because of the world. Hegel says, no, it's both. In fact, it's actually three things. It's individuals, it's processes, and it's the universe itself. Hegel says, but when you think it's only two, then you've got the understanding. The understanding that now what Hegel sees is that this is the contradiction, is that the system can only be understood by most humans 95% of the time in terms of this simple dialectic or interaction between parts and wholes, or individuals and society. Some simple opposition like this. However, this can, at certain moments in a system, destroy the possibilities for growth and turn the system against itself. What needs to happen is that there needs to be, and so Schmitt, in the concept of the political, calls this the double dialectic. What we need to do is that there needs to be established an idea, and here Hegel calls a way of living, or which can sustain both sides. In other words, what Hegel calls, or what Schmitt calls, a triple dialectic. We think in terms of dualities. There's the id and the ego. But Hegel will say, no. There's the id and the ego, and then, or put it this way. There's this famous, in fact, we were just there when Kern talked about it. You can look at a certain picture and say, oh, that's a duck. And then you can refocus your eyes and say, no, that's a rabbit. No, it's a duck. No, it's a rabbit. No, it's a duck. That goes back and forth.
Depends on the amount of shrooms you've taken. It's also right in this process with you hawking on Schmitt. I mean, really, someone like him?
Yeah.
The fucking Nazis? Yeah, man, we don't fucking care. This is all just the same soup. This is essentially, yeah.
Actually, what Schmitt says is, we can use this. Schmitt says, yes, I can use this stuff. But Schmitt also knows that it's a little, you're playing with fire. What is the drawing really? Well, here's the real answer. Is that this is a drawing which is drawn in such a way that if you focus your eyes one way, it's a rabbit. And if you focus your eyes in another way, it's a duck. So it is both a duck and a rabbit, but really it's those words that I just said.
It's a rabbit duck, man. Don't touch it.
It is a drawing. So here's what it is. It's and here are the words. It is these words in this string, in this sentence, the words organized in this way. It is a drawing drawn in such a way that if you focus your eyes in one way, it's a duck. If you focus your eyes in another way, it's a rabbit. But people don't want to go through the hassle of that explanation. They just want to say, no, that's a duck, that's a rabbit.
It's also something soothing when you can hold on to your image, that of the rabbit, of that of the duck. You've known this for ages. Why let it go? Just to be smarter? Why?
You need this broader explanation. You need a broader explanation. It's like, well, so what is a school? A school is these individuals who come to this class at this time and the ideas that they have when they get here. But there wouldn't be a school if there wasn't buildings and seats and books and heating for the buildings and parking lots for people to park their car. The school only survives because all these particular things are provided. So is the school what's in its head, or is the school the ideas that people bring to it in their heads, collective all these individual ideas, or is school this sort of functional buildings? And I would say, and Hegel would say, no. A school is something where education happens. You can't think of a school as it really is, as it actually works, if you don't have in mind this thing called an education. The education, so education is the idea that unites the particular things and that hold together the heating, the buildings, and then the individuals who come to it every day with their own particular ideas. That's what the state is. But the state is also driven, and it's driven by people's, yes, not so much ideas of education, but ideas that are constructed through the understanding. And the understanding makes mistake. And the biggest mistake that the understanding can make is something called the people.
Talk about lobbyism without talking about lobbyism. Nice.
So what is the people? So have you ever met anybody say, so what is it that you do? Oh, I'm a member of the people. Nobody says that. People say, I'm an artist, I'm a teacher, I'm a lawyer, I'm a construction worker. Nobody says I'm a member of the people. The people is an abstract idea. The people is which is the beginning of tyranny, because there is no people. It is indeed what Hegel is afraid of is the understanding, which has this confused conception of the whole as this idea, or as this mistaken idea of the people. The people is just a mass, an inarticulate mass. And it is this idea. The problem is that this idea has its own life within the Hegelian system.
Has its own legs, mass consciousness.
And this is what Hegel is afraid of. Mm-hmm. Hegel sees that the way that we put together ideas can end up with this false conception of the whole, which has its own motivation, its own dynamic. Mm-hmm. So you can say, so Hegel, when I read this whole thing about this triad of syllogisms and rational organization of individual, particular and universal, and these says of publicity, Hegel knows the whole time that the whole thing could fall apart. So he represents it as rational. That, gosh, you really have to be smart to understand all this stuff. Well, really, what you understand is that it is to a certain degree ununderstandable. It moves through irrationality. What the state is a great corrective, because most of us think in terms of the understanding, which is very crude, 95% of the time. But there are certain moments when people organize themselves in terms of this idea of the people, which in turn can be manipulated by guys like Schmitt. And because if you think of the people, then you can think of people or think of individuals who don't really fit in. As you think of what it means to be human, we really only understand what it means to be human, not in terms of a list of attributes, opposable thumb, we walk upright, or even we use language. Yes, there are these lists of attributes, but really we understand what it means to be human in terms of what it means to be inhuman. This is what we learned from the Frankfurt School, is that essentially we only understand something in terms of what it is not. And of course, if you aren't human, then you must be stepped on. Then it is disgusting. It is gross. It is not beautiful. You can call them Jews. You can call them immigrants. But the sad fact of human life is, and Schmitt is right in a really frightening way. This is why we should all study Schmitt very carefully, because he is onto something that is really scary about humans. It is easier to organize. We think of organizing the whole in terms of friendship, in terms of equality, and that's what motivates us in terms of a shared reality that we can call a nation, a family, common birth, common language.
No, it's 1096. It's the Crusader army burning down Jewish communities and plundering them at the Rhine in the Holy German Empire before they even went to Jerusalem, and to do the same there. Which is also funny because under Muslim rule, they hadn't have to endure all that.
Yeah. It's
Fucking
under
amazing.
Muslim rule, the Jews were welcome, right? At that time, at that moment in history, the Ottoman Empire was what was perhaps the most pluralistic in the world.
Here we go.
What Schmitt knows is that it's easier to organize people in terms of hate than it is to organize people in terms of love.
But for what? And to do what exactly?
Well, then, and now what it is? Well, the thing is that Schmitt may or may not have realized is that no ideal whiteness, blackness is ever perfect. In other words, so it's not the Germans, really, it's the Nazi Party. But there are some bad Nazis. We know this. We must constantly watch ourselves.
Which ones? The SS ones who killed the SA ones in the night of the long knives, or
I know. That's right. Or is it the SA? They were bad Nazis.
Had
to kill the Nazis. In other words, no ideal fits. Nobody is perfectly what they think they are, or what other people think they are.
Yeah.
What Schmitt saw the flaw in Hegel's in Hegel's system, but it's not really Hegel's system; it's our system.
Yeah.
And Schmitt saw play it. Schmitt saw now. This is how Hegel looks this, and he looks at the French Revolution, and he looks at the terror, and he sees that the entire why this all fucked up, why the revolution fell apart in the terrors, because we had this, or is it the French Revolution? They are understanding what was right and was wrong in terms of this sense of what it means to be a rational human. And if you weren't a rational human, then you were a threat. In other words, it was this abstraction, which is inherent in the way that we think, that can that can be organized by guys like Schmidt into a mob to further its own particular interest, which in itself is unstable, but nevertheless has the force of power. So in other words, Hegel knows that this is really, in other words, Hegel realizes in the elements of the philosophy of right that this entire system really contains a nuclear bomb.
As if he has already seen the French First Army roaming the countryside, killing everyone who looked as if he could or she could have been part of the Paris Commune.
That's right. That's exactly right. And we do it on the left and we do it on the right. There's a difference between there's a great line. So there was a debate between Aldous Huxley and a guy named gosh, who is this American, this slimy American rightist guy, William Buckley. And William Buckley asks Aldous Huxley, who wrote Brave New World. He says, "Why don't you attack communism the way you attacked fascism?" And Aldous Huxley replied, and he said, "Because fascism is a pagan idea derived out of a particular civil society." Actually, I said it. Fascism is pagan, is paganism, and communism is a mere Christian heresy. Communism is a mere Christian heresy. So on the fascism is the celebration of an individual or a people distinguished from other peoples. It comes out of a particular culture and a particular organization of ethics, of ways of life, of particular institutions, which are unique to the extent they are German or Italian or American. In other words, it comes immediately. It's well, this is what it just means to be American. And it comes out of civil society. It's not based on rationality, because everybody knows that it is irrational power. That's indeed what the SS were all about. Now, that's what they mistakenly thought Nietzsche was about. The SS was art. Hitler, when he put together the SS, actually it was Himmler, put together the SS, said he required that all of the SS officers, every SS man had to learn how to dance. That was a requirement. In order to be a member of the SS, you had to know how to waltz. Why? Because, well, he didn't want thugs like the SA. He didn't want the brown shirts in, and he knew that brown shirts, one thing, they didn't know how to waltz. He demanded that there be a beauty which is inherently more than, other than. It can be rational, but a part of beauty is irrational. And in other words, Himmler knew that you can't, that there is something irrational about every culture, something irrational about every family, or indeed about every individual. Sometimes we do things simply because we want to do them. I don't have a reason.
Yeah.
I just want it this way.
Yeah, we are organized around abstractions in a sense. So the way Nazis worked with their sense of beauty and old Greek art,
Yeah,
those plastics, those strong men, and whatever,
I so
pretty much
bizarre.
also gave away they are not, because they had these other concept to burn art and to get rid of art because they got so easily provoked and insulted and emotional because oh my god. So
So, in other words, every culture has its ins and outs.
that's
But
right.
then there is communism. Communism, which is what we can call, so you can make a distinction, which I don't particularly like, but it is there to be made, between fascism and communism, or authoritarianism and totalitarianism. The thing about communism is that instead of embracing this irrational idea, it's they have another idea of humanness, what it means to be human. The international working class shall be the human race. They are top-down organization, which involves control of every single aspect of civil society. In the 1970s, the Communist Party kept track of every single Xerox copy machine in the entire USSR. Every Xerox copy machine had its own watcher, because everything had to be controlled from the top down.
And now the NSA does the same. Ain't that funny?
Yeah, I know. To a certain degree, we're talking about basic ideas of what it means to be human that we see in everyday life. We meet some people who really do think that they are unique supermen. And then we meet some people who want to control everything down to, how many pens you have in the house, how many sheets of toilet paper do you use every time you take a shit. The- the- Hegel sees these things. He has a vision of all these things happening, and they scare the shit out of him. And he sees that they're in that these follow from the construction of his own system. And furthermore, he sees it because as manifesting itself through capitalism. What in and I'll finish with this, in and I've said this before, I'll say it again, is that in his section on civil society, which he describes in terms of market capitalism, but realizes in paragraph, I think 144, or 244, yeah, whatever. He realizes that holy shit, it's in the production system. We make more than we can consume. The only problem is that in order to make more that we consume, we have to pay our workers less than they need. In other words, our workers are our consumers. But in order to make a profit, we must deny our workers the pay that reflects the value of their work. In other words, what they produce. We are so he says we are too rich and not rich enough. We've learned how to make, as Sitting Bull once said. This is very, very interesting. Sitting Bull is this American Indian famous for
Chieftain.
chieftain, and he had defeated Custer, but then he ended up working. Well, not ended up. He for a while worked for Barnum and Bailey as an in a he was a circus event, not Barnum and Bailey. Wild Bill Hickok, or I forget, but Buffalo Bill. His traveling Indian show, even went to Europe, as I recall. But he is standing. He goes to New York, and he sees all these poor children. So he goes from the plains of America, and he takes a train. Never been a train. Takes a train, and he goes to these huge cities with 1 million people, and sees that white people live in palaces of stone. And he sees these amazing collections of for him wealth, and he's blown away, and he realized that the Indians could never survive, could never win. But then, amongst all these amazing marvels, he then sees these little kids who are outside of this circus begging. And he says, white man knows how to produce everything, but doesn't know how to distribute it. In other words, how can white people be rich when you have these children begging for food? Hegel sees the exact same thing. He sees that we are making all this stuff, but we need to charge too much to the very workers who made it.
There's also a much darker answer to that they know exactly what's going on.
But he also says this probably won't be enough. In other words, he's got this huge problem that he sees, and the amazing thing is this is in 1830, right? This is the amazing thing. It is said that we understand things as they are in their becoming, as they are first made, because only then is the new thing clearly established as opposed to the old thing. So when you have when something first develops, it's clearly new, and you can see it contrasted with the old.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's really, I can say, well, capitalism is made up of money and private property. But then I can say, as a historian, wait a minute, money and private property have been around for tens of thousands of years. That's not capitalism. What Hegel does is he sees capitalism as it's being born. He sees it as it is clearly contrasted with feudalism. And he sees the exact same thing that Marx sees, which is that the system doesn't sustain itself. And you need extra systemic solutions, because clearly imperialism, well, it has its limits. There's simply not enough world for it to sustain it. What Hegel does not answer the question. He does not address it, just leaves it there. And then 60 pages later, he says, democracy is the problem. Because the people will have this conception of the people, which is inherently false.
Which is the same thing Marx did. Pretty much everyone agrees on that he didn't deliver really any system, political system you could just right away take and use. But yeah, there you go. That's negation at work.
Is a system that Hegel is based on our conceptions of freedom, self-consciousness, and freedom. In other words, we have this incredible stability. We have this constitutional nation state, which is incredibly powerful. That is the way it is. We have this capitalist process, which, as Marx pointed out, is incredibly powerful, but which at any moment could could destroy itself. We have incredible stability and incredible instability. It's always possible to happen at any one time.
Baked into the system.
What holds it together? Hegel sees that it can fall apart. What holds it together, Hegel says, is argument and publicity and appearances. And that's what we'll get to. So what I'm going to do next time is talk about how it's all held together, but at the same time, what could happen when the whole thing falls apart.
Wow.
So in other words, so what is it in our system that makes it work? But where is the hidden flaw, and how can it be worked? How can it be also? So this is what I did last time. Is I talked about how this could be changed in terms of a counter hegemony, in terms of a counterculture, in terms of way that brings out the human in us. And Marx had this conception of humanity. But here's the kicker: once we set up this new system with these new laws, we're going to have the same problem all over again.
Mm-hmm.
Rationality has its own internal irrationality, which is, on the one hand, we celebrate as spontaneity, but and artistry that we just can't explain.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, we have this irrationality and spontaneity, which can turn into a mob action. Which can turn into something really ugly. In other words, there is dark matter in the system, and it functions to hold the system together, but you don't want to run into a black hole.
Yeah, we do best to contain it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so much for that. This was an excellent episode. Thank you very much. Are you around for some more time? So maybe we can open this meeting and take some calls.
Yes.
Maybe people want to show
So
up. We're going to post this on the Patreon site. I'm going to post a link to this meeting in the comment section, so you can just click on it and join
so
this.
I'll click on. So you're going to send this to me in Facebook?
No, we're just going to stay in the meeting. I'm just going to open the lines to the public, and then we'll see what happens. We'll probably be alone, because people are scared and completely mind blown at this point. We went on for 2 hours, man. This is too much. I love it. Excellent.
Okay.
Then see you behind the scenes. Check us out, people. Bye.
So we'll see. So I'm curious. Maybe Sally was listening. Who knows?
Hey, we're still live. You want to say bye? Say bye to the